At 02:14 hours, deep within the dense forests of the Kaliningrad Oblast, a Russian exclave surrounded by NATO territory, General Alexei Volkov sat comfortably inside the command center of Object 82. This wasn't just a bunker. It was a hardened nuclear command node buried 200 feet beneath granite and reinforced concrete, designed to survive a direct hit from a megaton-yield warhead. Volkov was watching the monitors of the Zapad-24 military exercises. Outside, the base was protected by 3 rings of Spetsnaz guards, S-400 air defense batteries, and thermal cameras that could detect a rabbit breathing at 500 yards. To Volkov and to the Kremlin, Object 82 was the safest place on Earth. He checked the time. In exactly 47 minutes, at 0300 hours, he was scheduled to initiate a dead-hand communication drill, a test of the automated system that launches Russia's IT nuclear arsenal if the leadership is incapacitated. Volkov believed he was alone in the facility, save for his elite security detail and the tech crews. He believed the air gaps in the server room made him invisible to the NSA. He believed the 10-ton blast doors made him untouchable. He was wrong. Unknown to Volkov, the forest floor 3 miles above him had been disturbed 20 minutes ago. Not by a vehicle, and not by a footstep. At 35,000 feet, well above the operational ceiling of standard radar coverage for small objects, a C-17 Globemaster III had opened its ramp. It didn't drop paratroopers. It dropped a specialized radar-absorbent glider pod known as the Silent Arrow. Inside the pod were 8 operators from 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, the unit, the scalpel of the U.S. military. They hadn't just drifted into the forest. They had landed 4 miles away and moved through the perimeter using ghost suits, adaptive thermal camouflage developed by DARPA that masks body heat to match the ambient temperature of the environment. To the Russian thermal cameras scanning the perimeter, the Delta team was just cold air moving through cold trees. The Russians were looking for an army. They were looking for tanks crossing the border from Poland. They weren't looking for 8 men who moved like smoke. At 02:20 hours, the team reached the ventilation intake shaft located 2 miles from the main entrance. This was the fatal flaw in Object 82's design. The engineers had built it to withstand a nuclear blast, but they needed air, and where air goes, Delta goes. The breacher, call sign Vandal, didn't use explosives. He used a thermal lance, a concentrated plasma torch that cuts through rebar and steel grating silently, melting the metal rather than breaking it. No sparks, no sound. Just a hole appearing where a grate used to be. Volkov was sipping tea, watching the green lights on, his console. He had 40 minutes until the drill. He didn't know that the countdown wasn't for the drill. The countdown was for him. The dissension. Hey everyone, John A.G. here. What we are breaking down today is a Tier 1 fictional scenario. This is what defense analysts call a non-permissive environment infiltration. It's the kind of mission that officially never happens. But historically, we know Delta trains for exactly this nightmare, taking down a nuclear command post before the enemy can turn the key. The descent into the intake shaft was a vertical drop of 180 feet. The operators didn't rappel. Rappelling involves friction, and friction creates noise. They used magnetic descenders, silent, motorized winches that lowered them at a precise speed of 10 feet per second, stopping inches from the turbine fans. These fans were massive industrial blades spinning at 400 RPM. To get past them, you don't blow them up. You hack them. The team's comms specialist, call sign Flux, spliced a bypass clamp onto the exposed control wiring of the fan motor. He didn't shut it off. That would trigger an alarm in the control room. Instead, he looped the all clear voltage signal back to the sensor, then physically cut the power to the motor. On General Volkov's screen in the command center, the fan status light stayed green. The computer thought the fan was spinning. In reality, the blades were drifting to a halt. At 02:28 hours, the team slipped through the stationary blades and entered the facility's air recirculation plenum. They were now inside the hardened shell. This is where the gear differential becomes terrifying. The Russian Spetsnaz guards inside were armed with AK-12s and standard body armor. They were elite, tough, and disciplined. But they were fighting in the 20th century. Delta was fighting in the 22nd. Each operator was equipped with the GPN-VG-18 panoramic night vision goggles that provide a 97-degree field of view. But these were modified with fusion overlay, outlining human forms in bright orange thermal outlines, even through thin drywall or smoke. Their weapons were the SIG MCX Rattler .300 Blackout. This caliber is heavy, subsonic, and hits like a sledgehammer. When suppressed, the action of the bolt cycling is louder than the shot itself. At 02:35 hours, the team reached the maintenance hatch leading to the server level. This was the golden ticket. The Russians kept their servers air-gapped, meaning not connected to the internet, for security. To hack it, you have to physically touch it. But standing between Delta and that server room was a hallway patrolled by a Spetsnaz Quick Reaction Force, QRF. 4 men, heavy armor, machine guns. Vandal looked at the team leader. The leader held up 3 fingers. This wasn't going to be a stealth kill. This was going to be violence of action. The breach at 0238. Hours the silence of the bunker died. Vandal placed a linear-shaped charge on the maintenance door. It wasn't a big explosion. It was a slap charge, a strip of explosive tape that cuts the hinges instantly. Pop. The door fell inward. Before it hit the ground, 2 flashbangs rolled into the hallway. These weren't standard flashbangs. These were 9-bangers, producing 9 distinct rapid-fire detonations designed to overload the sensory processing of anyone in the room. The 4 Spetsnaz guards were blinded and deafened instantly. Their training told them to spray fire down the hallway, but they couldn't see. Delta flowed into the hallway. This is called CQB flow. They didn't stop. They didn't take cover. They advanced while firing. Pfft, 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 pfft. The sound of 300. Blackout rounds hitting ceramic body armor is a dull thud. The sound of them hitting flesh is wet. Within 3 seconds, 4 Spetsnaz guards were on the floor. None of them had returned effective fire. The team moved over the bodies. No words were spoken. They knew the timeline. The gunshots, even suppressed, would have alerted the command center. General Volkov heard the thuds through the thick steel door of the command deck. He looked at his security chief. Report. Sensors in Sector 4 are dead, General. Cameras are black. Volkov realized then that the drill wasn't a drill. He reached for the phone to call the Kremlin. He reached for the lockdown button that would seal the blast doors and vent nerve gas into the hallways. He was too slow. At 0240 hours, Flux reached the server room junction box. He didn't need to enter the room. He just needed the conduit. He attached a vampire tap, a device that literally bites through the shielding of a fiber optic cable to read the light pulses passing through it. I'm in, Flux whispered over the comms. Injecting the worm. The worm wasn't designed to shut down the nukes. It was designed to steal the encryption keys, the codes that verify the launch orders. But the mission wasn't done. They couldn't leave. Witnesses. And Volkov was about to seal the facility. The team leader signaled, stack. They were moving to the main command deck door. This door was a foot of solid steel. You can't blow it. You can't cut it. But you can trick it. Flux, now inside. The system overrode the biometric reader. He didn't open the door. He signaled the door that the fire suppression system had detected a blaze inside the command center. Russian safety protocol for that specific bunker mandated that in case of fire, the blast doors automatically unseal to allow crew evacuation, preventing them from suffocating. It was a safety feature written in blood after a submarine accident years prior. Delta just weaponized their safety regulation against them. The hydraulic locks groaned. The massive wheel spun. Inside, Volkov stared at the door in horror. Override it! Keep it shut! It was too late. The heavy steel door swung open. At 0244 hours, the command deck became a kill house. There were 12 officers and 6 security guards inside. The room was tiered. filled with monitors and consoles. A tactical nightmare. Delta didn't run in. They sliced the pie from the doorway. 2E. First, two operators engaged the security guards on the upper gantry, precise single shots. The guards dropped before they could raise their rifles. Volkov drew his sidearm, a Makarov pistol. He aimed at the door. A red laser dot appeared on his chest. Then a second, then a third. He froze. The team leader stepped into the room. He didn't fire. The mission parameters were clear. Secure the intel. Neutralize the threat. Capture if possible. Kill if necessary. General Volkov. The team leader's voice was amplified by his helmet speaker, sounding robotic and terrifying. Drop the weapon. Volkov looked at the screen. The dead hand drill was 16 minutes away. He looked at the Americans. They were ghosts, faceless, no patches, no flags. He dropped the gun. Flux moved to the main console. He plugged a hard drive directly into the launch terminal. The screen flashed red, then blue. Downloading the architecture, Flux said. I need 90 seconds. 90 seconds is an eternity in a firefight. The base alarm was blaring. The topside garrison, 300 Spetsnaz troops, was mobilizing. They were coming down the main elevator. They would be at the blast doors in 2 minutes. We have... Company, Vandal said, watching the security feeds. Elevator 1 is moving. Heavy squad. Weld it, the team leader ordered. Vandal moved to the main blast door, the one they had just tricked open. He tossed a thermite grenade onto the hinge mechanism and closed it. The thermite burned at 4,000 degrees, fusing the steel door to the frame. The topside Spetsnaz could bang on that door all day. It wasn't opening. Download complete. Flux pulled the drive. We have the keys. We control the handshake. They had just stolen the ability for this specific node to authenticate a nuclear launch. Object 82 was now a brick, but they were still 200 feet underground, with 300 angry Russians upstairs, the ghost extraction at 02:55 hours. The clock was ticking down. The mission duration was nearing the 47-minute mark. They couldn't go back up the elevator. They couldn't climb the intake shaft fast enough. But Object 82 had a secret that U.S. intelligence had found on old Soviet blueprints bought from a defector in 1991. There was an emergency drainage outflow tunnel. It was designed to flush water out in case the water table rose or a pipe burst. It ran for 3 miles downhill, emptying into a river in the valley below. The catch? It was sealed with a pressure hatch that could only be opened from the outside or by a massive surge of water pressure. Vandal smiled behind his mask. I can fix that. The team moved to the lower maintenance level. Vandal rigged the facility's main water reservoir, 50,000 gallons of potable water meant to sustain the bunker for months. He placed breaching charges on the tank's release valve. Below it, the explosion ruptured the tank. A wall of water crashed into the drainage tunnel. The pressure spiked instantly. Clang. The pressure hatch at the end of the tunnel blew open. The Delta operators deployed miniature rebreathers, emergency air supplies carried for exactly this kind of exfiltration. They jumped into the rushing water. They rode the artificial flood like a water slide from hell. 3 miles of dark, concrete pipe moving at 30 miles per hour, pushed by 50,000 gallons of water. At 02:59 hours, 8 figures washed out into the Pregolya River, 3 miles away from the bunker. They dragged themselves onto the muddy bank. Invisible under the thermal blankets, they immediately deployed. Above them, on the ridge, sirens wailed at Object 82. The Spetsnaz were still cutting through the welded door. General Volkov was zip-tied to his chair, staring at a screen that said, System authentication failed. At 03:01 hours, exactly 47 minutes after they entered the intake shaft, the team leader keyed his satellite radio. Command, this is Ghost. 1-1, objective secure. Golden ticket is in hand. We are moving to extraction point Alpha. A stealth Blackhawk helicopter, modified for silent flight, was already skimming the treetops 5 miles away. The Russians wouldn't know what hit them until the sun came up, and by then the encryption keys would be in Washington. The aftermath. The next day, A gas main explosion was reported at a military facility in Kaliningrad. General Volkov was reported to have retired due to health reasons. The world went on, unaware that the nuclear balance had shifted. The US now held the keys to one of Russia's most critical command nodes. This scenario is fictional, but the vulnerability is real. Fixed fortifications are monuments to the stupidity of man. If you can build it, Delta can break into it. The terrifying part isn't the shooting, it's the 47 minutes. That's less time than it takes to watch a TV show. And in that time, the world's safety can be stolen. If you think this was intense, wait until you see what happens when a US submarine gets hunted by the entire Russian Northern Fleet. You need to watch this video right here. I'm John A.G. See you in the next one.